Hey guys, I'm here at the flea market with Hans. Hello. So it's our second day in India. Arrived yesterday and checked out the beach, had some beers, checked out the scene there. Hello there, Gabriel here. So what you just saw there was a clip from last week when I had just arrived in India in Anjuna, walking through the Anjuna flea market, which happens every Wednesday there, right near the ocean, the Arabian Sea here actually. And I was walking with Hans from Norway, who I just met the previous day, because we ended up sitting right next to each other on the flight into India here. Now, I didn't video vlog this journey from Paris to India, but it is an interesting story of my arrival into India, and so I thought that I would tell the story here that leads up to that clip that you just saw of me walking along with Hans. So as I said, I met Hans on the flight. That was the second flight from Mumbai down to Vasco da Gama here in Goa. Vasco da Gama is the largest city of Goa. Goa is a small state of South India. It's not technically South India, I guess, but it's pretty far south. And it was a Portuguese colony up until fairly recently, the 20th century, I believe. And so it was named after the explorer Vasco da Gama. And so I didn't have a room booked here in Goa for my first night because the flight arrived early in the morning. And I was thinking, you know, based on how I was feeling once I arrived, how wiped out I was, then either I would just get a hotel room there in Vasco da Gama, from the airport go straight into a town just a few miles away, get a hotel room and then just, you know, get my sleep for the day. Or if I was feeling up for it, then I would come into Palolem, which is where I am now, because this was kind of my ultimate destination for Goa that I wanted to check out. And so I ended up sitting next to Hans there on the flight. We start talking. Within a minute or two, he says, "I've seen your videos." I guess he recognized me right away. So that was cool. That doesn't happen all that often, actually, in case you're curious. Then that was the second time that it has happened on this trip of mine, in which I've been traveling for 3 months now. It happened once in Morocco, and then it happened again right here on Palolem Beach when I was taking a swim. But that was pretty cool to end up sitting next to somebody who had seen my videos, and a cool guy. We ended up talking. It was a short flight. It was just like an hour. One of the reasons that he recognized me from my videos is that we had actually exchanged comments under the same thread on somebody else's videos. Turns out we both follow another travel vlogger. His channel name is Indigo Traveler. I will put a link down below this video to both Indigo Traveler's YouTube channel and Hans's YouTube channel, because they're both small YouTubers, and Hans is just getting started with his channel, posting videos from his trip here in India. The other guy that we both follow, his name is Nick. He's from New Zealand, and he posts awesome videos. He was in India as well. In fact, it is because of one of his videos that I watched that I am in Palolem now. So we arrive at the Goa airport, and Hans and I both end up sort of meandering in the same direction, headed for the place to pick up our luggage. And we are standing there waiting for our luggage, and he is planning to catch a taxi or a bus or whatever straight up to Anjuna, because he has a hostel booked there. We're standing there, and then this guy walks sort of behind me. Hans is standing over here, walks kind of behind me, and then says to both of us, "Are either of you guys going to Anjuna?" And so I point to Hans and say, "Yeah, he's heading there." And so this guy is an older man, very interestingly dressed, like very colorful, sort of like Renaissance fair-ish. He has an American accent, gray hair, and so this guy wants to split a taxi with someone else, and so we all end up sort of chatting a little bit there while waiting for the other bags and talking about our plans. And so as this conversation is going on, then I'm starting to think, maybe I should just go to Anjuna. I don't know what it's about. I haven't been there. I've sort of heard of it, but it would be another place to see. And if we're going to split a taxi 3 ways, then that's going to be fairly cheap. And so once all of the bags show up and we're all standing there, then I'm like, okay, sure, what the heck. I'll go with you guys and see what it's like. And so we head out of the airport, go to the prepaid taxi booth, and book a taxi to Anjuna. It's going to be 1,420 rupees. So we all, in the end, gave him 500 rupees, a little extra for a tip. And so that is about like $8 each for what was like a 45-minute to an hour or so taxi ride. And so we hop in the taxi. It's like a brand new car. The guy's really nice, so it's a nice smooth ride. And so we're cruising along and, you know, talking about stuff as we're driving along. This guy is very interesting. The American guy, I'm in the front seat. The other two guys are in the back seat behind me. And it turns out that he had flown from Paris as well. And he had been on the same flight as I had. Steven, the American guy, who turns out is from, I think, Brooklyn, definitely New York City, pretty sure Brooklyn. He's a Jew, and he is just a absolute classic, you know, old New York City Jew character. And so he had flown from Paris on the same flight that I had been on, we discovered, and he had almost missed his flight, but he had caught the flight, the same one that I was on, because it was delayed. Now, the reason that the flight was delayed was because there was a bomb scare in the airport. And I saw all of that while it was going on because I was standing at the check-in counter to check in for the flight, the initial check-in, and I was one person away from getting to the counter. There was one guy ahead of me, and then I was going to get checked in and then get on the flight. I was like 3 hours early, nice and early, looking forward to, you know, just having spare time to hang out and not stress about getting on the flight or not. And then a like airline employee lady comes up along the side and is like, you know, whooshing people off this direction, and she's talking in French to the other people. And so I asked her if she can explain in English, and she speaks English, and so she explains there is a unattended bag somewhere nearby, and so they are evacuating that like section of the airport until they get it taken care of. And so they push us all just in this big, you know, cluster group back away from the area. We actually still stay in the airport, but off to the side, and so they clear this huge area, and there are just all these people just standing there waiting for them to, you know, clear the scene and get back to checking people in. And this takes a full hour, and so I'm standing there as it's going on, like, okay, I had lots of time, okay, you know, 15 minutes, no problem. All right, half an hour. Okay, it's been 45 minutes, and I still have to go through customs to leave the European Union after I get checked in. And so now it's kind of getting a little bit tighter, and I'm wondering if it's a long line through customs. Is it going to be kind of tight? You know, I'm starting to worry a little bit there. And so finally they clear things, check-in resumes. I rush to the front and get to the front of the line, get checked in. Customs is easy, and so I end up getting to my gate like an hour early or something. So then Steven had arrived, you know, maybe an hour after that or something, and had just kind of barely squeaked through and gotten on that flight. The reason that Steven was flying from Paris was that he was actually living there. He had left the United States back in the 60s and had been living abroad ever since then. So he had lived in Paris, maybe Sweden, not sure about that, but Greece, and India. He had spent a lot of time in India and then also other traveling, I guess. But he had not been back to the United States since 1998, almost 20 years ago. And he was like always making these funny references to like pop culture and stuff from like the 50s and the 60s as if it was like sort of relatively current. And so it was really hilarious. Like he was just this time capsule like stuck back in, you know, 5 decades ago, and then a New York Jew to boot, and his whole perspective and accent, you know, his accent was just, you know, totally still New York City accent, even though he hadn't lived there in, you know, decades. And so we are driving through the taxi, and Steven starts to feel sick. He has like stomach problems or something like that, and I sort of hear some like groaning kind of in the background, and then he's going like, oh man, stuff like this. And eventually he says, like, can we pull over? I need to get like something to drink or whatever. And so we end up pulling over and going to a convenience store and getting him some soda that he had asked for. And then the last like 15 minutes of the drive, It's like sounding like he's barely gonna make it. Like he wants to just like lay down and pass out. And Hans and I are getting worried that he's gonna like puke in this new taxi, or just like pass out and go unconscious or whatever. Like he's really just kind of discombobulated. He's an older man, like probably 80-ish at least, I think. But still like a hip character. And so finally we do make it to the guest house that Stephen is staying at, and that guest house is the one that I showed the tour of my room in a couple of my videos from Anjuna, because Stephen had been staying at that guest house back in the summer. I forget for how long, for a couple of months or something, or maybe longer. And he had to go back to Paris to take care of some business, something to do with the like apartment that he owned and was renting out, something like that. And so he had left India in August, flown back to Paris, planning to come back to Goa like a month later. And so he had kept his room there with all of his belongings in it. Here it is, early February. And so he had gotten just waylaid in Paris, stuck there for 6 months or so, and was finally returning. And so now he owed like 6 months back rent to the owners of this place. So I'm sure they were like relieved to finally have him show up, because that room had been occupied with his stuff all this time. And so that is how I ended up at that particular guest house. Hans was staying at a different hostel, but the people at the taxi stand back at the airport said that we all had to go to the same place. They didn't do like multiple drop-offs, and so we agreed to all drop off there. And then it turned out that Hans's hostel was close by, and so I planned to just check at that guest house that Stephen was staying at, see if they had a room. They did. They had that nice room that I got for like 1,000 rupees. And so there you go. That is the story of my arriving in India, which is often, sort of strange and has a weird story of some sort to go along with it. So I ended up hanging out with Hans, as you saw, for a couple of days there, and saw Stephen quite a bit as well, hanging out in the restaurant that was attached to the hotel there. He had a lot of stories from the past, from his travels, etc. I guess he is still there at that same guest house. He was planning to stay there for a while, but he had plans to move back to New York City after 50 years and continue his life there. So all the best to Stephen in getting things straightened out. All right, thanks for watching. Take it easy.